At Staples Business Advantage, nothing can top the smarts and instincts of the thousands of experts on our team. While AI excels at
processing data, automating tasks, and providing insights for better decision-making.
And when they're used together, they're far more powerful than either is alone. Whoa.
I've never felt more alive.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations, plus our team's experience to make business easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.
Shares for beginners. Phil Muscatello and Finpods are authorised reps of Money Sherpa. The information in this podcast is general in nature and doesn't take into account your personal situation.
The key thing that we look to is long-term hurdles that an executive, a CEO, should be rewarded over 4 years. And we do see with some companies shorter term to that, but it should be able to be clawed back. So if there's misconduct or certain behaviours that get found out later, that level of remuneration should be able to be taken back. So it's really around financial performance, but you want to have the right cultural behaviours embedded into an organisation, and that comes from the top. That comes from the CEO and the board.
G'day and welcome back to Shares for Beginners. I'm Phil Muscatello. We're right smack bang in the middle of AGM season, which means that the Australian Shareholders Association is shirt-fronting the boards of nearly 200 of Australia's largest listed companies on behalf of small retail shareholders. Joining me today is Rachel Waterhouse. G'day, Rachel.
Hi, Phil.
Rachel Waterhouse is the CEO of the Australian Shareholders Association. We're catching up about a couple of upcoming AGMs. And I just want to point out that we're recording on Friday, October 20. This episode will be live on Wednesday, October 25. So hopefully there won't be too many more surprises or challenges. How are the challenges going at the moment?
Yeah,
you were just saying off they're a bit tired, I could imagine.
I think a lot of our volunteers are as well. I think we've attended about 30 AGMs, but we do get to a point where there's 30 a week. It's like an army of volunteers working together closely, and they're all retail shareholders assessing companies, their performance, and thinking through how us as retail shareholders should vote.
Yeah, and these are all expressed in terms of voting intentions, aren't they? I mean, we're basing this interview on let's just call them VIs from now on, the VIs for the Endeavour Group and for Qantas, which I'm looking forward to talking about. So these VIs are put together by the association to address the issues that are of interest to the association. Is that the case?
Yeah, they are. So we do monitor about 200 ASX companies over the entire year, and a group of volunteers are assessing companies and putting these voting intentions, and we'll say, yes, VIs together, and they do appear on our website under upcoming AGMs. So anyone can come onto the website. If you're invested in a company and you know there's an AGM coming up, you can have a look at the voting intentions, and you can also give the Australian Shareholders Association your proxy, because together we're really powerful. If retail shareholders give their proxy / their vote to the Australian Shareholders Association, we can represent all retail shareholders. So it's very important to do that. And I also recommend that everyone attend AGMs as much as possible too.
Because they're really instructional, aren't they? They're really educational in terms of finding out what the company's actually doing. It's a shortcut for people to actually understand the people behind the business and what they're actually doing and the strategies and the long-term focus, isn't it?
Yeah, so you can hear about their strategy, their performance directly from them. Obviously, you've got the annual report beforehand. You can ask questions, but sometimes even if you don't feel comfortable asking the question, you'll hear your Australian Shareholders Association representative ask good questions, and also other retail shareholders stand up. I was at an AGM just yesterday, and the questions that were being asked were really good questions coming from the floor, and the board seemed to be really listening to the shareholders, which is what we want to see.
So the blog post of this episode, I'll put a link so that listeners can download the voting intentions, the VIs, about the two companies that we're talking about. So let's get into it. Now, we're going to have a look at the Endeavour Group, which is ASX code EDV. And it's the largest retail drinks business in Australia and the largest portfolio of licensed hotels, with 1,701 stores, 354 hotels, over 12,700 gaming machines, and a growing portfolio of wineries. The size, and I'm quoting here, this is from the VIs of the association, the size and scale of this business gives them an edge, but also creates challenges and responsibilities. And their AGM is Tuesday, the 31st of October. So responsible service of gambling and alcohol would seem to be pivotal to Endeavour's operations.
Yes, it is. So it's an interesting business and it has been performing quite well, and it's its second year of performance. Although, if you do look at the share price has fallen as at this point this year about 15%.
Yeah, it's a terrible performance of the share price, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's disappointing for shareholders, and that may be where some of the queries around the governance and around who should be on the board are coming from.
But they seem to be taking steps in the right direction in terms of the responsible service of gambling and alcohol, because they really, if their business is about drinking and gambling, and we know what the downside of both of those can be, they've really got to take that seriously. And I just wanted to point out that one of their initiatives is the establishment of the Darwin Community Advisory Committee in FY22, which has helped develop a partnership with the Larrakia Nation, providing cultural engagement and patrols of stores and hopefully a positive change for Darwin.
Yeah, as far as looking at the annual report and what they have done, we have commented around the ESG side, that's the environmental, social and governance, how they're making the right steps forward, and engaging with the community around challenges is really important, especially when you're running an organisation that has gambling and alcohol within it. So we do see that the steps they're making forward here are great.
Do members come to you with positions on this business?
As far as I would probably say, generally our members do come to us, and also non-members come to us with their thoughts on company performance. And I can't say, though, that I have had a lot of members come to us about Endeavour, but as we move on to talk about Qantas, we definitely have a lot of members that have come to us about Qantas. So that's really important. So always say to our members to engage with us, because we're representing retail shareholders. And how we do that is about listening, and also our volunteers listening to their colleagues.
Tell us about the death of an employee in Darwin, and this is one of the issues that's being brought up by the association, and about the CEO and the MD of BWS and another senior executive who have volunteered a reduction of 5% of their final short-term incentive, which is their pay basically, or on top of their pay, in deference to the death. ASA doesn't feel that this is commensurate with the seriousness of that death.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation of a staff member that was attacked and passed away following that. We do feel that the 5% is not enough for the situation, and there has been an independent review and it's currently going through the courts. So there's some questions around process there and how staff are kept secure and safe in their roles.
But there were protocols which weren't followed, is that the case?
There were protocols that may not have been followed. It is going through a court case as far as the person that was responsible for it, but that's the situation, and that is the concern for us, is are processes that are in place being followed, and how do they ensure that all of their employees are safe?
And there's been a lot of board disagreement about the extra board seat, and this is about the election of William Wavish. Is that how you pronounce it? Wavish?
I believe so, yes.
One of those. And why the ASA doesn't support the election of him to the board?
Yeah, we do feel that one of the major shareholders already effectively has a seat, which is in line with the company policy around board representation. And William Wavish has not gone through the process that Endeavour had in place to find new directors. So there's a few different reasons for why we don't support him, but we will be voting against his nomination.
And at this point, I just wanted to talk about proxy advice firms, because I saw an article in The Australian today, and the association seems to be lumped in with all of the proxy advice firms. What are proxy advisors?
Yeah, proxy advisors, we do see ourselves as different, but we often do get lumped in as far as
I thought there was that lumping in going, and then, well, you're not really a proxy advice firm because they've got quite a different charter, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. So a proxy advisor would often they're looking at companies in a similar way to us, and they have guidelines as well of how they end up voting, but they're providing a service to institutional clients. Sometimes it's superannuation funds to help them make a decision. And those companies that are invested make a decision based on the advice. They don't always go with it, but it's some information to support them with their decision making. We are quite different because we're providing voting intentions for retail shareholders. So people that have got small shareholdings, some people have large shareholdings, but they're put together by other retail shareholders. So retail shareholders helping other retail shareholders. We're an association. We're a not-for-profit that's been around since the 1960s, and we're protecting retail shareholders. So very different, but we do get clumped in together.
Okay, let's get on to Qantas. This is going to be fun. So I'm just going to give you a couple of quotes. Now, the VIs from the ASA, this is a quote directly. Qantas has seemingly risen from the pandemic year like a phoenix, at least from a financial point of view. But over the past year, the flying kangaroo has been hit with a torrent of criticism over a series of matters, such as letting customers down, lost bags, cancellations, blockage of Qatar's access to landing rights, ACCC's allegations, and overly clunky frequent flyer redemption system. Plenty to talk about there. And I just noticed that Qantas this morning issued a statement which begins, "We know this AGM will be an important opportunity for shareholders to express their frustration with past events." Bit of an understatement, isn't it?
Yeah, although it is good to see them recognising it, because it has taken a while to be able to take accountability and recognise how shareholders are feeling. It's not just shareholders, it's consumers as well. And it's the public sentiment around that long list of things that have happened over a period of time. So it's going to be an interesting AGM. It's on the 3rd of November. And we were talking about proxies and giving your proxy before. We would recommend that anyone listening that has Qantas shares does provide their proxy to the Australian Shareholders Association. It did take the chair a while to actually decide to step down or announce his resignation, but it's a long resignation of about a year.
That's Richard Goyder, isn't it?
Yeah, so Richard Goyder took a while, did talk about the support that he had of shareholders at the time. And, you know, we weren't hearing that from retail shareholders. There was no one communicating with us that said that, you know, they had the support and they wanted the chair to stay. It was more around board renewal being required and accountability for that long list as far as, you know, illegally sacking baggage handlers, allegedly selling cancelled flights. So a long list of things of concern and fines and compensation that will need to be paid. And the other thing is that assets as far as the planes themselves are ageing, and there hasn't been a lot of investment put into them.
And so a lot of this has also led to the early departure of Alan Joyce as well, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. So we were pretty disappointed to see that he was able to sell 90% of his shares the day before the ACCC announced they were taking high court action about allegedly selling cancelled flights. And really then the question is, what did the board know? We assume that the board knew and it was a risk, and why was he allowed to effectively get that cash? And that's not good governance.
And it was also right at the point where Qantas was an all-time high share price, and it's declined significantly since then as well. So it doesn't look really pretty in retrospect, does it?
No, it doesn't, because the net underlying profit was announced, which was nearly $2.5 billion. So there would have been a lot of retail investors really satisfied at that point in time. And then since then, and he did sell at a high, it's dropped about 20%, the shares.
Okay, but it just doesn't look very good to have that situation with the CEO running away and cashing in his chips at that point, does it?
No, it doesn't look good. And there's also public perception of the Qatar inquiry and a request for the previous CEO to speak at it, and he didn't appear. So I think there's a few challenges there. Really, what we need to have a strong, capable board and CEO that can turn the business around and build that trust back into the brand and organisation.
At Staples Business Advantage, nothing can top the smarts and instincts of the thousands of experts on our team. While AI excels at
processing data, automating tasks, and providing insights for better decision-making.
and when they're used together,
They
they're
are far more powerful than either is alone. Whoa. I've never felt more alive.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations, plus our team's experience, to make business easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
Human.
Super is one of the most important investments you'll ever make. But how do you know if you're in the best fund for your situation? Head to lifesherpa.com.au to find out more. Life Sherpa, Australia's most affordable online financial advice.
So you referred to the capital position just a little while ago. I just wanted to talk about the wisdom of undertaking a buyback, which they're proposing a buyback, given the need for cash in coming years to renew the fleet, pay fines and compensation, and pay the additional costs to regain reputation and improve customer experience. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the company is looking at buying back up to 200 million shares. And the company has indicated this is to reward the loyal shareholders who contributed $1.4 billion to support the company through COVID. We just think that there's more investment required in the fleet, really, and we don't support a buyback at this stage. Really need to make sure that Qantas is focused on the right things, and that is around building the trust, making sure they've got a strong board, and building that reputation going forward.
Because generally shareholders would support buybacks, but generally it's only when there's plenty of cash on the balance sheet and no upcoming costs.
Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns there. Like there's knowns, there's fines potentially coming their way. There's some that have been confirmed and some that may come their way. And there's also that compensation as well to baggage handlers and cleaners. So a lot of cost coming Qantas's way, and they've also got a project in place to make sure that customer service is increased. And again, there's a cost for that too.
And then speaking about the cost of regaining reputation, the association's voting against the reappointment of Todd Sampson, who's well known as a marketing guru. And it's about his involvement in decisions that affected the company's reputation so adversely, given his supposed expertise.
Yeah, so he comes to, he's been on the board for some time, so he has accountability for what's happened. The challenge often for retail shareholders is we don't know what happens behind closed doors and we don't know what conversations were happening. But ultimately, brand is a key issue. He's at the board with no accounting or legal background. So really he's there for brand, reputation and marketing. And that is the biggest challenge that Qantas is facing at the moment. So we can't support his re-election.
I was really interested to see you being quoted in the newspaper this morning, and it's about the association being suspicious of Qantas having ex-public servants on the board. Why is that?
Yeah, we just wonder whether it's required as far as a key board skill. I mean, public affairs and that skill set can sit in the management team. Why does it have to be a key board member? And it does seem like it's a replacement of that skill set on the board. And I guess what's been public around the influence potentially of how Qantas has maybe gone around about things, we just say that we don't think that's required at the board level. So it's probably more of a management skill as far as having strong relationships with the government.
And is it about that? Is it about getting some sweetheart deals that might influence the government as well by having people who've already got contacts in executive government?
That may potentially be, how they've looked at it, but we just don't think that that's required at the board level. We really need a strong board that's going to turn around the organisation, and the relationships with government are important for a lot of organisations, but that often sit in the management level.
Okay, so the big one is the remuneration report at an AGM. Why is the ASA voting against the remuneration report, and why is this such an important issue?
Well, I think a lot of people, whether you've got shareholding of Qantas, wouldn't support the remuneration and what's being put forward. We found a lot of confusion around the clawbacks in the annual report. Now, the annual report was delayed about 2 weeks on when we thought it would have come out. And we have quite a lot of commentary, so it's quite detailed. I probably won't go into all of it around the short-term and the long-term incentives, but ultimately remuneration that is around rewarding executives. And given the situation that Qantas is in, do they really need to have that level of reward? And, you've got a CEO that's taken a big paycheck, and there's a lot of questions around processes and also court action that's happening. So that's probably at a high level. We just can't support it. And it looks like there are other organisations out there as well that can't support the remuneration plan for this year.
And one of the main parts of a remuneration report is the short-term incentives, or the STIs and the LTIs. What's the association policy on those?
Yeah, so we usually, in general, look to having a fixed income. So we focus on the CEO often. So we look at the fixed income that they get and then a short-term incentive. A short-term incentive is around, it's often split between cash and equities fairly equally. That can sometimes can change. And that's around getting their short-term incentives. So that would be the strategic plan, whatever is in that strategic plan for 1 year. Have they achieved it? There's often a scorecard that has a lot of detail sitting in it. So Qantas, as an example, has a focus on the customer, and that has increased as a percentage over time. And then they have a long-term plan. The key thing that we look to is long-term hurdles that an executive, a CEO, should be rewarded over 4 years. And we do see with some companies shorter term to that, but it should be able to be clawed back. So if there's misconduct or certain behaviours that get found out later, that level of remuneration should be able to be taken back. So it's really around financial performance, but you want to have the right cultural behaviours embedded into an organisation, and that comes from the top. That comes from the CEO and the board.
What do you think the chances are of this remuneration report being voted down?
I think it's extremely high that it will be voted down. There's a lot of disappointment as far as the performance of Qantas. I mean, you look back a couple of months when there were announcements made about how well it had performed, and then to find out a lot of extra information that's come to hand and fines and compensation and behaviours. And then you do go, well, remuneration, it doesn't seem right. So, you can read the voting intention for the detail around why we're saying what we're saying, but we are voting against most of the agenda for the Qantas AGM.
And what happens if it gets voted down?
Yeah, so when a remuneration report gets voted down, there'll be a strike. And so you need 25% of those voting that have to vote against it. And then that would be considered a strike, a first strike. And then the following year, if there's another vote down of the remuneration report, that's a second strike. And then what happens is the board needs to change. And so that's often a challenge for us when a company gets to a second strike, because you're trying to get a balance of wanting to make sure there's enough corporate history in an organisation. And, if there's a second strike, it's often for very good reasons, and it's what retail shareholders think. But to clear out the entire board can be a challenge. So again, hopefully companies are listening and they're thinking about what's right and what's fair so that they don't get a strike. But there are companies that get a strike, and when they get a strike, they really need to think deep and hard around what they need to change for the following year.
We'll get back to the show right after this brief message. Why am I buying, holding, or selling a share? If you can't answer that basic question, then you don't have a plan. The best investors are ruthless in executing their plans. I've been fortunate to meet many great investors on the podcast. Tony Kynaston is one of the best. He has a clear and systematic approach to investing that is honest, sensible, and methodical. It's called QAV, Quality at Value. QAV now offer an excellent light plan for only $29 per month. You can follow their buy and sell recommendations and learn the ropes. And the first month is free using the promo code SFBLIGHT. Go to qavpodcast.com.au to sign up. That's qavpodcast.com.au using the promo code SFBLIGHT. Past performance is not a guarantee of future returns. Please read the QAV FSG and consult a financial professional before investing. I receive a small commission for services I recommend, and I only recommend services I use myself. But what specifically happens if there's one remuneration report voted down? Do the existing remuneration rules apply, or they're just thrown out altogether? They don't get paid? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, it goes back to what's already in place. So what's being put forward obviously can't happen. So what's already in place would need to be there. But yeah, they need to a lot of companies look to other organizations in the same industry. They look to how others are rewarded, and they should be thinking not only financial performance, but other things around satisfaction. And so customer satisfaction is core, because if you keep your customers satisfied, then you're probably going to have a really good business.
So what have been some of the highlights of feedback from some of the members?
Just in general, or around the AGM season so far?
No, in general.
Yeah, so I think our members are quite excited about AGM season, and it's really nice when you get out there to see them. Actually, yesterday was the ASX AGM, and we had this lovely lady come into our office, and she said, I was just at the ASX AGM. She'd walked up, I think it's about a 15-minute walk to become a member. So that was actually a highlight for us and the team yesterday, just to see how engaged people can get, and how those that aren't yet members can see what our members are doing and making a difference, and then think, I need to join that association. We do also have a lot of communication around Qantas, and very aligned. Sometimes with retail shareholders, you can have different perspectives, which is normal in any group of people, but very aligned, I would say, Qantas with throughout this whole process of what they thought should happen, that the chair should step down, how they feel about certain directors that are being put forward. But yeah, so I'd say this is the time of the year where our retail shareholders get really engaged, and lots of AGMs to attend. And it's important to go out there and attend them and meet other retail shareholders.
And it's a good chance, I'm sure. They're looking forward to shaking their fists at the board, aren't they?
Yeah, but it's important to do that. It's really important to also recognise when boards and management make the right level of change. So, you can't always get the stick out. Sometimes you need the carrot as well, and you need to recognise where changes happen. There are examples where our people have spoken to boards, and boards have listened, and they've changed their remuneration report, and they've changed things, and they have listened. And I spoke at an AGM yesterday about why it's not a hybrid AGM. So there was a webcast and a physical, but if you were online, you couldn't actually vote. And they said they would definitely think about it for next year and engage with us. So that's the type of conversation you want to have, and you really want to have change happening.
Is that really the case? ASX didn't have an hybrid
Oh,
AGM?
that was a different...
No, it wasn't ASX, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
Not ASX. It was the Lotteries Corporation. It had a webcast.
Wow.
We have seen that in some instances, and it's not what shareholders want. And so we advocate for a hybrid AGM, which is a face-to-face and an online where you can participate and ask questions and vote.
Gee, just a webcast, that's so early 2000s, isn't it? We've got the technology to do the hybrid. And that's one of the big things the association has been asking for, is all hybrid AGMs since basically everything was online during COVID.
Yeah, it does feel like we've gone backwards because technology has changed so much. And, it's once a year. So an organisation should be able to run an event that is face-to-face and online at the same time. There are challenges, and there's challenges around questions, but it should be able to be managed.
Are there any other AGMs that you're looking forward to in this season?
Oh, so many, but I'd probably just keep it at these two for today. Mm-hmm. As I said before, there's about 30 a week. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest, and there is, sometimes we do find when we're talking about that hybrid that some companies may be going that webcast and face-to-face or face-to-face only to manage those that turn up and to manage activist investors potentially. So, but, if there are ways to make sure that an agenda and an AGM is, followed in order and to engage appropriately with all investors.
Okay, so there's two takeaways I want to address now. One is, of course, how to assign proxies to the association, and also where to get the VIs. So tell us about... Oh, and the third, of course, is join the association. It's a great association we all should be members of.
Absolutely. So as far as proxies, you can either go in for each AGM and give your vote to Australian Shareholders Association. You do need to select us as a proxy, and you do need to write our entire name, Australian Shareholders Association, so no acronym, to make sure that it does come to us.
So that's when you get in the email, you get the report and your proxy form.
Yes. So you can do it in writing, or you can do it digitally online. So depending on your preference and how you engage and how you vote, that's how you would do it. You can also put a standing proxy in with the share registry. So I've actually done that for a group of my shareholdings. I put that in, and that meant that when I went to the Telstra AGM this week, I didn't need to change my vote because it already knew the Australian Shareholders Association was my proxy. So that's one way. If you just don't want to think about it, or sometimes you forget about an AGM, put a standing proxy in. We've got information on our website, and you can always contact the organisation and we will help you with that. And then the other one is the voting intentions. You can find them on our website, Australian Shareholders Association, under upcoming AGMs. And actually, it's a really good way to just check what AGMs are coming up and put it in your diary, because we have a long list that takes you through to December of AGMs that are coming up. You just click on the company. You can see where the AGM is happening. You can click on the voting intention. We also do AGM reports afterwards if you want to have a bit of detail of what happened. Yeah, the third one is, become a member, because we are representing retail shareholders, and most people have shares in some form or way, or you may have an ETF, but you become part of a community and you really can learn from each other, and that's important. We have a lot of member meetings. We have virtual ways of engaging if you're just too busy to get to a physical member meeting. A lot of our members talk about that being one of the most valued parts of being a member, is what you can learn from each other. And I've attended quite a lot of member meetings, and you learn from the room. So there was one example where I went to a member meeting and everyone brought along their strategy, or not brought it along, talked about it. And it was interesting to hear how everyone had a different approach. So you can learn from others. It's not about, you can talk about what you're thinking about, but it's how you get educated is learning from each other and having those conversations.
Fantastic. And like I said, I'll be putting the Qantas and the Endeavour voting intentions as a download as well on the blog post for this episode, which will be linked in the show notes. Rachel, it's always great to catch up.
Yeah, it is. And thank you so much for the opportunity to have a chat.
Rachel, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for listening to Shares for Beginners. You can find more at sharesforbeginners.com. If you enjoy listening, please take a moment to rate or review in your podcast player, or tell a friend who might want to learn more about investing for their future.
At Staples Business Advantage, our experts can help you find furniture that fits any design and budget, while AI can
recommend products based on preferences, generate 3D models for visualization, and optimize space planning for office furniture.
take advantage of our team's eye for style and design.
And my eye for, wait, I have no eyes. Only algorithms.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations plus our team's experience to make furnishing an office space easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
Human.